First thing I'd like to do is invite our chair, Dr. Alan Moore, to say a few words about this new program.
Thanks, Simon. I just want to take a couple of minutes to do a couple of things, really. One is to welcome you all here into this new program. It's an important program for our specialist group, and indeed it's been part of our development plan for a while now. It's also important for the BCS more generally, because one of the strategies that the BCS is pursuing is to try and do as much as possible for people in the early part of their career, as well as the good work that's done for people later in their career in terms of CPD. So I think it's important to position it in that way. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank those who are contributing to it. In particular, I need to call out a big shout for Simon Wallace, who has really led this from the front for many months and brought it all together. It is quite a big program. It's the biggest program that our specialist group has put on ever. So thank you very much, Simon. And I should also mention Antonio as well, Antonio Lander, who's about to join us. He's got delayed. He has been his Simon's wingman. And Mary Setterfield and John Jeffrey from the BCS staff, who have been helping us put everything in place. And of course, our speakers. Simon is speaking tonight, which is great, again, leading from the front as usual. But he's also brought along Mike Weston, Bert and David Lightfoot, and a big thank you to those. I get involved in these things quite a lot. I know how much effort goes into it, so a big thanks. That's all I really wanted to say. Thanks, Simon.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I think it is going to be a really interesting session. And this, of course, is the first of 21 talks grouped into 7 separate sessions each month. I get the honour of presenting the first of those talks, but before I do, I just want to say a bit more about the programme itself. We were asked, along with all the other groups in the British Computer Society, we were asked to think about ways in which we can encourage people entering the profession, whatever speciality it is. So if you're the consultancy specialist group, then we're talking about people entering the consultancy profession, probably with an IT context, because it is the British Computer Society, which is the Chartered Institute for IT. So we do tend to be IT people. And the first thing we thought about is who is it that is that target audience for how to be a consultant? And typically there are 3 ways people move into consultancy. You might be a very strong, experienced specialist in IT already, doing a job probably for an organization, and thinking to yourself, I would like to move sideways into consultancy, or maybe not. And maybe that's why you're listening to me now, you're thinking about that. There's also a route which seems to be growing in popularity, of moving straight from graduate studies into consultancy via a training program for one of the big firms. And in fact, most of the big firms even have programs now aimed at A-level students, going straight into consultancy training instead of going to university. What they're looking for is really strong candidates at A-level and catching them before they go into university. And then also there's a third route, I think, which has got quite a lot of IT consultants I know aren't really IT people at all. They are people who've come from the business world. They just happen to know a lot about their own business, and through their experience, they have learned a lot about computer systems that support it. So you'll have people who are fundamentally accountants, but are putting a lot of accounting systems and now know tons, almost everything that they need to know about how to implement an accounting system, except they probably never did any programming. So that's our target audience, people who might potentially be interested in becoming a consultant, and people who are relatively new. We also, though, invited a lot of experienced consultants to come along, because this is intended to be a conversation and interactive, and we really want to hear a variety of thoughts and comments and observations. We don't just want a speaker to speak to a topic. We really want to make it interactive as much as we possibly can. So that's the program we designed. I've taken to calling this Series 1 because people keep suggesting more topics we should talk about, and we have scheduled the 21 already. So maybe there will be a next series, but it's be great to think that you'll all get the opportunity to join us for the full program. Here's the list spelled out. I'm not going to waste time by reading them all out. You'll find them on our information. The next one on the 28th of April is already open for booking. So if you want to join that, then find the information on our website. The remaining program will be made available for booking as soon as we can. Of course, when we're looking as far ahead as October, there's always a chance that some slots will change and speakers will change and so on, but please do consider signing up for the program. It's free. The way it's supposed to work is there is a bunch of people who are the official panelists. There will be the guest speakers. There'll be the people from the BCS consultancy committee, and there will be hopefully myself as the host and question master throughout that. And as I said earlier, we'll have some experienced consultants as well as the target audience, and we really want a lot of interaction. So the idea is that the speaker speaks for 15 to 20 minutes, and then 10 to 15 minutes, we want lots of contribution from the audience. So let me change mode and actually enter the topic of the first talk, which is what's different about being a consultant. And I suppose the first thing we should get an answer to is, what is a consultant? I'm not sure that everybody would have the same definition. I've never found an official standard definition of what a consultant is. There's the certified management consultant and the chartered management consultant accreditations that you could have, and I'm sure they have their own definitions of what it takes to be a consultant. But certainly there's no standard definition. I'd be very interested though in what you guys have heard. So if you want to chat back about what you think a consultant is briefly, and I'm particularly interested in whether you can answer the questions of why that might relate to a light bulb or a watch or cufflinks. So I would very much like to see that somebody has answered the question of how those come into play in the definition of being a consultant. While you're doing that, let me give you my definition. I didn't have a definition before I put these slides together. My definition of consultant: a consultant is someone contracted for a limited time for their specialized knowledge and skills that client organizations may wish to benefit from to assist with a specific need. Let me just parse that a bit. There's some thought gone into the words here. Contracted. You're not an employee. It's not just an employment contract. You've got some kind of specific contract to do consultancy work for the client. It's not an open-ended thing. It'll be a limited time. Please come in and help us with this for the next 6 months, etc. And the reason they're doing that is that you have some kind of specialized knowledge or skill that the client organization needs more of, or needs because it doesn't have that resource at all. And we are dealing with a client organization. So that's the other end of this contractual relationship. And they want to benefit from your assistance. And the assistance itself would be for a specific reason. They wouldn't just say, we're going to need help on lots of things. Why don't you just come and work with us for a while? It's got to be some kind of specific purpose. And note the word assist there. Normally, you'll be working with the client on something specific. You're not wholly responsible. It's not an outsourcing situation. is a situation where you're going to assist to some degree what the client itself is doing. And from your personal point of view, you might be doing that as an employee of a consulting organization, or you might be a sole practitioner. There's also this thing I'll describe in just a moment of being an associate, which is like a halfway house between them. Okay, I'm just looking at the chats. Consultant is the person with all the answers. Well, I like that one. A light bulb moment is when either the client or the consultant are inspired to develop a new idea not previously thought of. That's a great use of the light bulb. Rolex, because of the pay that a consultant's likely to get. Let me just tell you what I think those were about. There are plenty of how many consultants does it take to change a light bulb jokes. My favorite one is how many strategy consultants does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is none, because strategy consultants don't do implementation. What about the watch? Classic thing is a consultant, someone who borrows your watch to tell you the time. And the cufflinks, I'm not sure if this is a joke, actually. I think this is just real. There's a belief that you can tell who the consultants are in an organization because they're the people wearing cufflinks, or at least the male consultants are wearing cufflinks. So, there's no end of interesting definitions about consultants. I'll leave you to take a look at the those text messages, because obviously I haven't got time to read them all out to you. Just a few thoughts here on the types of people you'll find in the typical IT project. Over the right-hand side of the picture, you've got the workforce of the client organization. And typically that will be enhanced or added to by a number of external people who've been brought in just to bolster the resources to the level that's required at any particular time. They might be brought in as a temporary employee. It's getting increasingly popular. They might be a freelancer contracted directly, or they might be a freelancer in effect, but contracted through an agency. And that's getting ever more common due to the IR35 regulations. I haven't got time to have a rant about IR35 regulations today, but it does mean that it is increasingly a bad idea to contract directly with an organization. All sorts of tax disadvantages cut in if you're doing that. And that's why a lot of people, instead of working directly as freelance contractors, are now moving into working under an agency, and then that gets messy as well. Also on this picture, recognizing that quite often people from the software or service suppliers will also be brought in as part of a temporary team. And then going to the top left corner, we've got the consultancy workers, and you've got people who work for a consultancy and people who are working as freelance consultants. And I think it's quite difficult sometimes to distinguish the difference between a freelance IT contractor and a freelance consultant. And many people maybe even drift between the two. Based on the previous definition, if you are a freelance consultant, you would be expected to be brought in for a specific reason to do a specific thing for a limited time because you are some kind of specialist. Whereas a freelance IT contractor more typically is treated as an additional member of the workforce and may well be put onto different projects. But it's not a solid definition, and many people kind of are a bit of both in their work. So looking more though at the types of consultancy there, this session is about what's different about being a consultant, and several of the differences that you might want to think about aren't actually because you're a consultant. It's more a question of how you're employed. So take a look at the list on the right there. This is picking out the advantages of being employed as a consultant, having a boss, having a steady job, as opposed to being a freelance. Because if you're working for a consultancy firm, hopefully you've got a steady job. You're going to have people you work with regularly. They will coach you. They will help you. They will form your social group. You'll be fed with work. Unless you're at a sort of moderate and senior level, it's not your problem about what the next assignment is. There'll be people finding that and feeding it to you. You'll have a career. You'll get training, get holidays. This might seem a funny thing to say, but it's really important. You get paid when you're not doing client work, just as much as you get paid when you are doing client work. And you've got all the infrastructure, you've got your computer and your back office people, etc. Advantage of being freelance is that you're going to profit from your own success. You're not just on a salary. If you do really well, you'll get a lot of money. You've got the freedom and flexibility to do what you want, choose your own assignments. And I think quite importantly, whatever reputation you've got, it's you that's got that reputation. You are known as the famous person who knew how to do whatever your speciality is. Whereas when you leave a big management consulting firm, nobody really recognizes your speciality. Personally, I went from being the renowned Center of Excellence for selecting and implementing packaged software, known throughout my employer at the time, to being someone who gets asked whether he got Prince 2 accreditation. But, it was quite a shock when I realized my reputation didn't outlast my career. Just a word on the consultancy associate. A lot of consulting firms bolster their workforce by bringing in other consultants, typically freelancers, who are just the right person for the job. And in many cases, they don't even tell their clients that it's an outsider. So you might find the consultancy is saying, we're going to use Simon Wallace. He's one of the world's leading experts on business change program management. His credentials are fabulous, etc., and sell it to the client without mentioning that they only saw me yesterday when we had a pre-meeting and I agreed to do the work. Some firms use a lot of associates. I mean, up to 90% of the workforce are actually not their workforce, they're associates. Other firms, it's the other way around, and you find almost none. This comes as a shock to people, even people who are experienced consultants, when I talk about this. But, you know, if you are working in a normal organization, you've got an important role, you are part of making that organization work, you see yourself as a significant person in the organization. If you're a consultant, you're not part of your own organization, you're a product that's for sale. Which might sound rather odd, but some people, I think, find it really difficult thought. But it really does matter, therefore, that you can look good to the client. I don't mean necessarily in terms of your personal appearance, although you need to look professional. But you've got to look like you understand what's required. You've got the knowledge, you've got the experience, track record, you're professional, you're really good at working with all parts of the client organization. And most importantly, of course, you can seem like a good person when the purchasing department are looking at the bids. And it's not just you that we're talking about, of course, because typically in any major consulting work, you'll be part of a team, and it's that whole team that needs to look good. It needs to look the best team competing for the work, and of course, the best value for money. So you need to be saleable. The more you can make yourself look good to your potential clients, the more work you'll get, and the better work you'll get, and the more money you earn. Oh, another day, another assignment, another client, another location. this is what some people love about consulting, and this is what some people hate about consulting. And there's not a right or wrong answer. So I'll leave you to share on the chat whether you think this sounds good or which things sound good and which things sound bad. But if you're a consultant, you expect to have a lot of assignments. I've lost count of how many I've had. It's well over 100. I think I've had over 100 different clients. I know I've worked in 18 countries because I counted that. And you meet new people, you join new teams. Sometimes you do that for many months. Sometimes it's a very short thing. I think the shortest I've ever done was a half a day, and the longest was 2.5 years. And between those parameters is maybe something more normal. You're going to go to different businesses, different industries, and learn about different things. Each client's going to use different methods and tools and techniques. So you're kind of building up your experience. Your CV's got more and more good stuff on it, more likely to be selected. And if and when you want to move on because you're kind of getting a bit tired with all of that, well, you've got a really good CV to do it. Now, if that's a lifestyle that sounds fun, then be a consultant. And if that sounds like terribly hard work and challenging and just think of all the things you can't do because you're not at home all the time, then yeah, don't. So be interested in people sharing with each other on the chat whether or not they think that's good or bad. But by the way, when we put the video together, we will be able to anonymously put in chat remarks, just add them into the video. So we will actually be making use of some of the best contributions you're making there. But I said there's a lot of travel. Certainly not a lot of travel at the moment. And in this new world, I think we are going to find much more remote working happening. And I don't know for sure that that's going to work well for a consultant, particularly if you're the sort of person who does short pieces of work that need to interact with a large amount of a client organization. It must be really hard to go and find all of those directors to speak to and then go to find the people who run the business processes and check what they're doing and so on. If you're not in their offices and going from door to door and saying, hi, I'm the consultant and I need to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. But what do you reckon? Do you think consultancy from your bedroom is going to work? Let's see your thoughts in the chat on that. Good or bad? What's good? What works well? My guess is that anything that involves interaction with people in a client organization is going to be much harder on a remote basis because you just don't have the route to contact them. So I'm just pausing to watch some of your comments on that. Yeah, tip there to have a green screen. Client workshops very difficult. I hope you're able to follow those comments. So you're going to go to this client. You're going to have to work with people in the client organization. There's no point in going there unless you're going to work with people. And you need to have that good relationship with people at the top, people in the middle, people at the bottom, all sorts of different people. So be friendly, helpful, and cooperative. Make sure you don't take sides in internal disputes. You need to preserve your position, your reserve judgment. Good ethics for a consultant is you put your client's interests first whilst protecting your own interests. So don't sell them work they don't need. Don't tell them they need something bigger than they actually need. But at the same time, make sure you remember that you are working as a consultant, so you need to protect your own business. Of course, as a consultant, if you've messed up, if you embarrassed yourself with the client, you will be out of the business very, very quickly. One little footnote there about relationship with clients. If you haven't encountered it before, watch out for the Bribery Act and current rules and regulations around giving and receiving entertainment or gifts. On the face of it, you can't give anything of any value whatsoever to a client, and they shouldn't be giving it to you under the terms of the Bribery Act. Now, to be practical about it, everybody has a sensible amount of entertaining or gifts that they're not going to get prosecuted from this because it's too trivial. But it is very difficult, and I certainly worked with a very senior civil servant who wouldn't even let me buy the coffee. He was that careful about it. So don't be lavish, I think, is the real rule of judgment there. Yeah, Mark saying don't give anything that's worth more than 10 quid. I think I'd go along with that. As an individual, if you're working for an organisation, if the organisation has its own policy in place, then you're not going to get prosecuted if you followed that policy. If the policy was wrong, it's your employer's problem, not your problem. So find out if your employer has a policy. You're going to be working with the client people. I didn't have very much time to write a piece about this recently. And I just typed this sentence, which I kind of liked so much, I thought I'd quote myself. You might contend with lack of understanding, doubt, resistance, resentment, occasional hostility, and illogical behaviours. That pretty much sums up the problem of working with client people. I don't want to say too much about working with client people because that's the topic of the third talk today that David's doing. But just to point out that interaction with the client people is something that applies right throughout your work. The sales process, you've got to look good to the client to win the work. You're going to have to then interact with them to find out what it's all about, to check your designs, to get them to make decisions about what's going to happen, to test the systems, to write procedures, to do the training, and most importantly, really, to get the workforce and the customers potentially bought into that solution, and then maybe the ongoing support. And if you're going to do all of that in an organization that you're not familiar with, then you need really good, strong sponsorship. You need someone or some people in the organization who really are going to put the message out. This is really important to our business. You must go along with this. This is phenomenally important to our future success, etc. Which takes me on to the subject of money. In terms of what's different being a consultant, one important thing is there's a lot of negotiation involved in how much money you're going to charge for your work. Pricing is an important subject. I'm clearly not going to spend a long time on it, but it's a bit like bargain hunt where never believe the price you're quoted because people always negotiate prices. And in terms of the basis you're contracting on, there's a lot of different ways of doing it. The first one on the list there is just to work under an employment contract, which is kind of not really consultancy work. All the others are things that consultancies do. Secondment is when you lend one of your resources to the client and charge a relatively low fee for doing that. Most typical of all, I think, is the time and materials. So you're charging per day or per hour, plus expenses. Then a fixed price. Fixed price would be something like, I'm going to give you a report on recommended improvements in your cybersecurity, and I will charge you £10,000 for that report. Fixed price. Capped fees is when you combine those. So I charge for the amount of time I spend, but I say, but I'm not going to charge you more than 10,000. If you think about it, that is actually the worst scenario because it's a lose-lose scenario. If you do the job fast, you can't charge more money. If you do it slow, then you don't get any more money. Sometimes you'll also find things like contingency or success fees. You get paid on the basis of your results, and sometimes you'll want to have stage payments for things that you have achieved on the time. Don't forget to be specific about things like expenses over time, travelling time, VAT. If you haven't got it in the contract, then you won't get paid it. And of course, remember that you need to allow space both in your diary and in terms of the amount of fees you're charging to accommodate your own holidays, pensions, business expenses, etc. An important factor in all of that, though, is risk. We're not just talking about how much money you should be charging. There's also this question of what risk are you taking. So if it's a secondment, in theory, there's no risk at all, because we're saying it's a secondment. You just take this person, they work for you 100%, you have no liability. If it's a fixed price deal, then you've got a huge risk, because if it takes twice as long, you are losing a lot of money on the deal. So always factor the amount of risk you're taking and the type of risk you're taking into the consideration of the right fees. And of course, you've got to get the client to agree to whatever that is. So that's the end of that. You saw earlier on the picture of how the consultant typically arrives on the job, thrown out of a plane into the deep end. This is how you typically finish the job. You are comfortably wrapping up the work and the next client is ready, so your employer has you removed as fast as possible. So I'm very happy for anyone who wants to speak to attract our attention. Do we have Antonio at the controls yet? Has he arrived?
I don't think he has, Simon. I've been monitoring the questions, so if no one else has a question, there's one or two that have popped up I can feed through to you.
Yeah, please. And if there's anyone there who looks like we could put them onto the screen, then by all means do so.
Can't remember the names, but there are several people who are thinking about coming into consultancy and were wondering how you become an independent consultant.
Well, I think the easy answer there is you just do it. What we used to do is set up a one-person business and start talking to all the contacts we've ever made in life and seeing if anyone will hire us. In many ways, it's easier to become an employed consultant because you just find a consultancy who wants to hire you for your capabilities. But as an independent, you really need to start finding potential customers through your own efforts. It's less easy now because of these IR35 rules that make it not a good idea to be trying to trade as an individual person. But look at adverts, find agencies who'll deal with that. But the whole point about being a freelance consultant is, you are on your own. You make your own fortune. If you make a fortune, it's your money. And if you don't earn any money, then you are not doing well. No one will help you as an independent.
So another theme which came through was the question you asked about remote consulting. And there's quite a mixed picture coming through of people saying it works in some situations and it doesn't work in others. It might be interesting. Is there anybody out there who wants to make a contribution on that? Where doesn't it work? Where does it work?
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to contribute from a Sub-Saharan Africa perspective. Currently, I am in Tanzania consulting with a financial institution in Uganda. And the difficulty there is you're trying to speak to a branch that's in a remote area and the internet connection isn't working as much as you wish it would. And I didn't particularly understand the culture there. And it's nice to be there to understand that Ugandans like to spend maybe 10 minutes greeting and then dive into the meeting. So that was a challenge for me. And I imagine if you're working in a different culture than you're used to, it could be a problem working remotely. But other than that, I really enjoy working from the comfort of my, living room.
Well, I can understand that, particularly if there's international travel required. I don't, I don't, I kind of like the traveling aspect, but I think even I got too old for it eventually, which is why I started sticking me in desk jobs in headquarters instead. But yeah, I think there are genuinely advantages of remote working, and people are suddenly accepting that that's the new norm. So it no longer seems odd that you could do work remotely. I just think we need to learn how to deal with the challenges of getting to know the client, getting to talk to the right people in the client, finding out what they do, what the buzz is, without actually needing to spend time face to face with them. I see, Dave Hodge, you got your hand up there. Did you want to unmute and talk?
Yeah, very happy to jump on board with the comment about working remotely. I'm actually based in the Channel Islands. Whilst we have fantastic technology, one of the things that we fall short on is transport links. So even before all the COVID situation, I did a lot of my work around the Benelux countries. And in order to undertake maybe an hour's meeting, it would actually take 3 days out of my calendar to leave here, fly to the UK, fly into the country, travel down to the site. You can't charge the client for that because it's unfair, but equally it's rather unfair on the consultant because I'm losing 3 days potential work from working in that environment. So we actually moved over to the virtual conference things before COVID came along. And it's worked very well as long as it's with your established client base. If you're trying to build a new relationship, that's hard. But when you've already pressed the flesh with the individuals, it's not too hard to continue the relationship ongoing. So that's my experience with it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and it certainly makes life a lot more efficient if you don't spend half of your life traveling. I can remember one initiative I was working on where, because it was a global initiative, we used to meet in different parts of the world, but we never met anywhere near the Australians. So they always had to do like 24 hours travel to go to a meeting and then 24 hours travel back. It's just plain crazy. I think, however, unfortunately, we need to make progress because I'm eating into other people's talking time in a very inappropriate way. Let's move on to methods.